Disney parks are starting to become a disappointing shell of its former self, and it's sad to see. With all the future changes, current greedy practices, and even nostalgia bait tactics, it's easy to see that the hypocrisy is seeping out of the cracks and are somehow still in place thanks to the magical duct tape that holds it all together. I'm not saying the parks are bad to visit, but I am saying that they're not what they used to be for sure. So in this episode of Watersurf Side Tangent, it's time to revisit the parks one more time in a video essay format. Back in August of 2024, I made this 51 long minute video essay about the unfortunate decline of the parks, and this video you're watching here is sort of a follow-up to it. Not exactly a sequel, but just kind of a follow-up. So I highly recommend giving that a watch before watching this if you haven't already. But, you know, you're your own person, so you can ignore me and skip ahead to this timestamp if you want me to get on to the point already. Oh yeah, I figured that I mentioned that this is all my own opinion, where I draw my own conclusions. This video is not associated with the Walt Disney Company, and not everything in this video will be 100% accurate, as things do change on a daily basis within the company. I just wanted to get that out into the ether, as I used to be a former attractions cast member at Disneyland, and I don't want the mouse to get angry with me. That was cringy. Anyway, without further ado, it's time to buckle up those seatbelts, give that yellow tab a good old tug, and it's time to hang on to your hats and glasses because it's the wildest video in the wilderness or something. Alright, let's just get this out of the way. Disney has a serious problem with how they announce things and how they deliver said things. They did say that everything announced at D23 would be built, but it's almost a year later, and dirt has barely started moving on most of those things, if not all of those things. The only thing that did actually come out was this re-theme of Splash Mountain, and even that was sort of underwhelming. I get that it's a massive conglomerate of a company, but I've only been seeing announcements of what's about to come, but nothing actually moving forward. There is also the fact that some things are just straight up getting yoinked from existence to replace it with some shiny new IP. The entire Rivers of America in Magic Kingdom is getting replaced with some Cars attraction, and the only thing that they showed us was some Imagineers driving around in some fancy golf carts, as well as some new concept art. Okay. Monsters Inc. is finally getting this badass roller coaster, but we're losing the Muppet Theater in the process, which, mind you, was Jim Henson's final project before his death. But hey, at least the Muppets will live on in the rock and roller coaster, right? They also said that Autopia in Disneyland was supposed to go electric by 2026. And guess what? Oh yeah, that's right. Not a peep from that as of recording this. I already have a hunch that nothing will actually happen because Autopia is a forgettable attraction and not worth the effort to shut up that loud minority that will complain about stuff online. Do I personally hope that it gets some alternative fuel source? Absolutely. But thanks to recent changes in the economy, thanks to the Dorito Taco Man and the whole political spectrum of the US, I don't expect Autopia going electric to be the #1 priority on their docket. Like, these other attractions are probably a bigger deal than the little baby car ride, as much as I love it. That sort of leans into that topic of all these things they promised to come last year, and yet I somewhat expect them to quietly be canceled like a lot of the projects in Epcot were just half a decade ago. I get that it's expensive to run a massive theme park ecosystem like this, but when you crank up the prices every time your CEO sneezes, it seems a little ridiculous that $1 billion is just going to retheming attractions with a fresh coat of paint in the form of an IP that needs to get pushed because we want to have more attention. Some of these rethemes are not it, especially when you don't fix the problems from the predecessor. I'm not talking about Splash Mountain going to Tiana's, I'm talking about the actual ride system itself. Listen, I will give Disney a little bit of slack here that they weren't on the ball ahead of time during the pandemic, but at the same time, Epic Universe is now here, and all they are saying is that it'll drive up their business because of it. Okay, yeah, sure man. I know I would try to go to both theme parks if I could, but like myself and many other consumers, we're pinching our pennies right now because, the economy isn't that great, so we're not traveling as much right now. And also, it's not a smart investment to start working on a brand new theme park for Disney as well. That's why they probably license out their brand to get a resort in Abu Dhabi. Oh yeah, let's talk about that real quick. I get Disney is pretty hands-off for this, and I get that it's a good location for those in the area, but there are also some ethical issues with this as well. I'm not educated enough to cover that topic in this video, but I do know every time they build a new theme park in some different country, there is always some sort of controversy, like there was with Shanghai, like there was with Hong Kong, like there was with France. I mean, you can just look at the canceled projects like Disney's America that was supposed to go in, I believe, Virginia, or the canceled plans that were supposed to be in Long Beach, California, and rework the Queen Mary. Will this Dubai project actually happen? Who knows? Personally, I would give Review Time's video a watch if you are more curious on that topic, as they did a good job covering it. Now, the thing with the future of the parks is that you have to wait and see with Disney. Yes, they announce things way too stupid early. I just wish they would announce things like how Universal does. Wait until the construction has started, and if people ask what's going on, you just say, future projects or something. That's all in the future though. Let's talk about Right Meow. What issues are going on, Right Meow? Why does Disney always focus on the future instead of focusing on the present? Well, that will be what the next chapter is going to be about, the current issues. If you watched my last video on this subject, you are definitely aware of the issues with attraction reliability and the guests, and even pricing. I will say that these issues are always going to be present, as they have always and forever will be. As long as people go to the parks, they will raise the prices. As long as customers can get away with bad behavior, it will still happen. And yes, as long as attractions operate, there will be some technical hiccups here and there. The parks are pretty self-sufficient, as they pay for themselves and then some. Starting out with attraction reliability, from a former cast member perspective, a vast majority of attractions that break down are guest related. It's always someone dropping something or getting out or taking way too damn long to get in and out. Grandma, get in the rocket, we gotta go. I talked about it a little bit in my last video, but it's seriously the main reason attractions break down all the time. Some attractions have more complex systems that will take longer to come back up from if something like this happens. That's why you always see Rise of the Resistance breaking down, because they have a really complex system that I'm not even gonna get into here. I will tell you this, that we as cast members were always taught this one important thing. If someone is out on the ride path, stop all vehicle motion. Seriously, make sure nothing else is going on, auto e-stop if you have to. If you were unaware, I worked Autopia, Monorail, and Star Tours. Those are my 3 attractions that I called home, and each of them had their own unique style of breakdowns regarding guests. Autopia was just dummies hopping out of their cars or ditching their car to get in with one of their homies. Monorail was usually a guest not sitting down while the vehicle was in motion, or just us waiting way too damn long for someone to fold up their goddamn stroller so they can finally get on the train or out of the station. Like, fold your stroller before you get in, people. And then lastly, Star Tours. That was a rare exception that only had guest-related issues that caused a breakdown. And those were custodial. Yeah, that one lady who threw up her entire hot dog and made the whole exit hallway and cabin 2 smell like mustard. Ugh, good times, man. I can still smell it. Seriously, how much vomit did you have? Like, how many hot dogs did you scarf down your gullet? You made the whole hallway smell like mustard. Now on to other attractions like Space Mountain. They had something called a cascade, and that was the most common breakdown. This is very common for roller coasters, actually. They have about a 13 to a 17-second window to get you in and out of those rockets and send them on their spectacular space flight, or else a backup will occur. This is because there's multiple rockets or trains or whatever you want to call them out on the ride path. I'm sure there are many different breakdowns of how every attraction operates, whether it be here on YouTube or elsewhere, but you get the idea. Attractions have breakdowns because sometimes guests have breakdowns and do some things that aren't family friendly. That moves on to my next point of guests. I will say that even after leaving at the tail end of 2023, guests are behaved for the most part, a vast majority of them, that is. They never have any issues, they're not going to be bad, they're just going to have fun and, have fun. The wild ones you hear about online are few and far between. I would say like 1 out of every 1,000 guests, if that. But I will say that more guests are okay with being erratic thanks to the consuming too much brain rot or something during the pandemic. I don't freaking know, man. Even visiting very seldomly over the past year or so, I never really saw anything too crazy. I did see the typical parent telling their kid that we're here to have fun, or the lady on an electric mobility scooter going way too fast. But nothing like the things that happened when I was working there. The only thing I do see is the outrageous price increases, and that's the biggest issue out of everything. The fact that Lightning Lane starts at $32 at Disneyland is ridiculous. The fact that the parks are now creating an entitled guest problem because someone paid for this sad excuse of a fast pass is ridiculous. The fact that there is this stupid expensive option to just use Lightning Lane whenever you feel like it, but only once per attraction, and you guessed it, it's ridiculous. I know Disney will continue to raise the prices every chance they get, and that's because people like you and me keep going. With anything like capitalism, you want something to change, you need to vote with your wallet. Until everybody gets on the same page, they will keep raising the prices because customers allow them to. This is just how business works in the capitalistic society we all live in. Now you may be asking, well, you still went, you still spent money there. Yes and no, silly viewer. I finally went through the last of my free tickets from being a cast member, as I never really used those freebies I was given in the first place. So now that I'm officially out, I don't go that often. It's probably back to like once a year or once every handful of years for me, and that's okay. You can spend your money however you want to at the end of the day, but just know that if you want to change with a mega corporation like this, you gotta get others to vote with their wallets too. Now I guess the next chapter will be on something I didn't really cover in the last one, and that's the Disneyland Forward plan. This chapter will be mainly focused on the Disneyland Resort and some of my speculations as well as my disappointments. It's really neat that they're doing all this cool stuff like expanding the parks out and building bridges, but it leads me to why? I mean, I know why, but why? You have some things that are not being utilized that are just either sitting abandoned as storage or just not being utilized to their full potential. I get that expansion is good, but seriously, let's talk about the multiple theaters across both parks not being used. The Tomorrowland Theater is probably the most well hidden and the most underutilized. Seriously, how many of you actually know that there's a theater hanging out here unless you knew it as Captain EO or Honey, I Shrunk the Audience? They also used to have this occasional promotional film for upcoming movies and or shows, but since then it's been sitting there abandoned. I don't think I ever saw it being used when I came back, like it was a pre-pandemic thing. I will tell you straight up that it's perfectly fine in there. Nothing doesn't seem to be entirely wrong. I used to have lead meetings in there with the other different leads and managers in the land when I was a lead at the monorail. So why not use this theater to eat up some of the crowd in Tomorrowland? Show some little 15-minute film or bring back one of the old shows. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Both the Hyperion and Fantasyland Theater come to mind as well. These things take up a ton of people, but the Hyperion has been sitting in this weird limbo since they finished that temporary Captain America show, but also the Fantasyland Theater doesn't have a permanent show like it did with the Lion King one and the Mickey's Magical Map. All these theaters could take out some of the crowd, but 2 of the 3 of them need actors and crews to run these grand old theater plays, and I know it's a weird issue with Disney right now. I also know that there's empty buildings in Hollywood land that I don't even know why they exist outside of just blocking the view from backstage. Seriously, I have never seen any of these buildings open aside from that one that was a temporary Avengers store. The rest, no idea if they have stuff in them. It doesn't help that you have the Disney Junior Theater always having something new going on or weird going on. The entire land feels like an empty Hollywood lot, but you can't go inside any of these to see the movies being filmed, and it's also crowded because it's Disneyland. Luckily, there was that announcement recently of Avatar coming in and replacing the area, but not really. Yeah, what's up with them keeping that Hyperion Theater and that other weird-ass building, but you're getting rid of Monsters, Inc.? Why not just level the whole thing? I have no problem with Monsters Inc. going, but it seems the most out of place with everything else that was announced. On top of that, what the hell are you gonna do with the monorail line that goes straight through the land? I know you guys ain't moving it because of how stupid expensive it is to replace and how stupid complicated the monorail system is. I guess the monorail will just zoom through the land or something and be like really out of theming, but whatever. Honestly, I don't think it's needed, but at the same time, you are yoinking out the bus area for something that seems way scaled down. I also feel like Avatar is the biggest grossing movie series in the world, but nobody talks about them. Can you name any of the blue guys from the movie? I sure can't because I didn't watch the second one and I don't remember the first at all. But hey, at least Coco is getting added and it doesn't seem to like it's taking away anything, but that's besides the point. There's also this walkway over Harbor Boulevard and the new parking structure that seems to be going on the old Casimir lot that's right there across from the Garden Walk. Low key, I used to park there and walk over to the AMC after my shift because I didn't want to pay for parking at the Garden Walk. Don't tell anyone. Anyway, the underutilization most people probably jump to is the east side of Tomorrowland, specifically Autopia, Finding Nemo, and the abandoned Rocket Rods track. Don't even get me started on the weird state of the Innovations building. All I can say is that Autopia and Nemo are not going anywhere anytime soon, and the Rocket Rods track is nearly built into the entire land, and that would have a new headache of paperwork to replace or to repair. Tomorrowland would literally need to be leveled in order to fix the most glaring issue of the land. I do also believe that the parks had a new problem arise post-pandemic, and not many people seem to discuss it as everyone discusses it indirectly. The crowding issue, but it's not for the reasons that you think. Alright, this is going to sound weird to those who really don't know, but crowds aren't the same what they used to be. There are a lot of people that visit the parks, and yet they don't ride anything, or they don't ride as much as they used to. I'm not talking about the magic key holders entirely either. I've noticed from experience, observation, and even various amounts of videos online that guests don't go to the parks to ride the attractions, but to just hang out. Yeah, you heard that right. They just hang out in a sort of way. Guests are just buying more food as well as walking around the parks and people watching, but they aren't going out of their way to ride attractions. Yeah, believe it or not, some people are willing to drop $200 just to stand around and go, ooh, ah, whoa, but not actually go on any of the attractions because line too long, or I want to go on something more thrilling than merry-go-round 1. It doesn't help that you have the other factor of Lightning Lane. This system is so much worse than MaxPass ever was just because of the fact that guests can't technically use this to its full potential. Now, why would Lightning Lane cause crowds to not be normal anymore? Well, as flawed as the original FastPass system was, it was somewhat regulated by a team of customers on the back end. On top of that, it was free for everybody. The only upcharge was using the MaxPass so you didn't have to physically go to those locations to get the little paper ticket. Now with Lightning Lane, it seems to be all automated based on the numbers given by each attraction. Sometimes this number may also go higher than it should be, so more and more guests are able to book Lightning Lane for a time slot that doesn't actually have the supply to meet the demand at that given time. Now before I go on to this whole side tangent and side-by-side tangent episode, just know that this was based off observations. I saw when I was working there that there was a FastPass team pre-pandemic as they were in the backstage Tomorrowland offices. Nowadays, it's handled by the attractions themselves as well as their dock services, which is the team that updates attractions' wait times, operational status, and other miscellaneous things that you don't need to know about. The best example I can give is actually Star Tours. Star Tours has 4 different cabins at the Disneyland Resort. When one of those cabins goes down, we would have to report it, and that should be reflected on the wait time and the number of Lightning Lanes being given out at that time, which would be about 75% of whatever spots they give out every 5 minutes. Here's the thing though, not all the time is this reflected immediately, as attractions can get hectic and it might take a hot moment to get things updated in the system. That moment can still have a big impact, as not only are you getting guests coming in for their current reservation, but you also have an impacted queue, which causes the line to get backed up into the land, and this whole slippery slope of how Lightning Lane is bad when things go wrong. While it's not reflecting the current name scheme anymore, Defunctland's documentary on the FastPass goes into more details about this terribly flawed system. I would still say that this still rings true to today and has only gotten worse with the current expensive tier that lets anybody show up whenever, wherever. Now you may be asking, why is this important for crowds? Well, thanks for asking there, pal. When guests see a long line, guests will just wander aimlessly until they find a short line. Believe it or not, some guests will not wait in any line that's longer than 20 minutes. You also have this other factor that guests do blockages at the line entrances because they don't understand lightning lane, or they have the genie, or they're upset that their infant child can't go on the roller coaster. Why won't you let my infant child go on the roller coaster? Honestly, that's just a given at this point, but I figure I mentioned it anyway. Because when they see this whole blockage at the entrance, they go, oh, the line's long, but it's not updated on the time. See ya. That's exactly what happens. The last thing is how crowds aren't the same anymore. It's just the fact that there's no such thing as an off-season anymore. Since the parks reopened from the pandemic, they have been busy. Who knew being closed for over a year would cause business to boom so crazily that almost 4 years later, you're still getting this same business? I'm mainly referring to Disneyland as that's the park that I am most familiar with, so apologies for leaving out the other resorts across the globe. I guess that leads me on to the last chapter of the video before my final thoughts. It's probably been said before, and it's even in my dang old thumbnail for my last video on this topic. The magic is gone, or it has severely faded over time. I will admit that, yeah, the parks are still fun to go to, but when you get bogged down by all the negative, you start seeing the shortcomings of everything. Do I wish the parks were cheaper? Yeah. Do I wish they focused on making something jaw-dropping like they did with the Rise of the Resistance? Also, yeah. Do I wish they would stop relying off their old image to make you eat the memba berries? 100% yes. Look, I'll be the first to admit that this new things coming to the resorts is cool, but you can't say, look, shiny new thing, without upkeeping the older things. Disney prides itself on its image, but there are attractions that are literally held together with painted duct tape. You would never know. Disney prides itself on being the best customer service in the industry, but allows some cast members to practically get away with poor performances that hinder the attraction's efficiency. Disney prides itself on the fantastic IPs, yet they make the lamest and or safest attraction imaginable, like that Web Slingers one. Come on guys, Spider-Man's cool, I don't want to do this. That's lame. You also have the over TikTokification of the parks and their weird ass fixation on certain things. This isn't entirely on Disney or even other businesses, as I know some influencers can make something out of nothing. I'm sorry, but the best theme park food is still just theme park food. Overpriced and probably not good when you compare it to the real thing elsewhere. There's also the merch problem. The fact that merch is hyped up like it's the epic thing to the max or something is ridiculous. Yeah, look, these shirts are really cool, but not $70 cool. It's also really cool that Disney wants to limit items from being sold, yet you see these goobers carrying out dozens of limited time popcorn buckets to go resell on eBay or some other online marketplace. Yeah, you got your money, Disney, but they're scalping it for double the price like they are with Pokemon cards. Nobody likes scalpers. I also want to mention that upon my most recent visit back in May of 2025, I got these Minnie Mouse ears for my kid. She absolutely loves these things, yet somebody yoinked them from our stroller at some point. Now, this isn't on Disney, but the fact that I bought this item for my 3-year-old and someone yoinked it from a toddler when we weren't near the stroller is ridiculous. Look, I'm not pointing fingers, but I'm still salty about it, and yes, it's on me for leaving it in our stroller despite leaving it buried in the undercarriage. Yeah, whatever thief stole them knew exactly where we put them and didn't just take anything else. Like, we had some other stuff in there, but they just took the ears. So if the thief in question is watching this video, go jump in a cold lake, buddy. Seriously, that's not cool. I had to buy another pair online because Lost and Found said they couldn't find it. And again, that's not on Disney, that's on me for leaving them in the stroller, but you think when it's buried under the undercarriage, nobody's gonna know where it is, unless they happen to be looking. Urgh. Sorry for that side tangent, but still though, it's a weird argument that I'm trying to make here, but I also feel like the parks are always improving, but at the same time, not at all. Maybe it's just the fact that I worked there for so long that you end up noticing all the irregularities and things that could be improved upon. Maybe it's the fact that every cast member is different and may give a guest a different experience depending on the time of day. Maybe it's the fact that guests are also different and maybe just having a bad day. You never really know with these things, and it's just a shame that even if you eliminate all the obvious things, you're left with greedy executives at the end of the day. That's the real fact of the faded magic, and that the parks are expensive. Things that used to be free are now a higher upcharge. Park tickets and add-ons are always increasing prices to meet with their quarterly profit reports or whatever. Cast members or other Disney employees are getting laid off because, oh, we don't do that anymore. Or just because one person can always do the job of 3 or 4. All I will say to this is that if you're going to push your prices onto the consumers, at bare minimum, make sure the park operates smoothly and your employees are better taken care of than just the bare minimum. Disney can do better, and blaming it on the economy or the pandemic or even the other theme parks in the land isn't going to cut it anymore. In order to improve the magic, it's time to let some creatives actually be creative and not just slap an IP on everything because it's trendy right now. Give an IP a reason to be great and not mediocre. I don't have high hopes for the upcoming attractions that are being built, and that's even if they ever end up getting built. It just feels like they're doing a mad rush to get the stuff done before the 2028 LA Olympics. That's great and all, but the construction hasn't even started as of filming this video. I hope you finish it by 2028, Disney. In order to secure the magic, you need to make sure things are working properly. And hell, do what Universal does. If you know that an attraction has issues with people dropping crap, then maybe make them put it in the locker before boarding or verify that all items are secure. Also, deal with the troublemakers and finally put a goddamn guardian policy like the other parks have. Seriously, I used to hate working grad nights because these high schoolers would act like they're complete menaces to society, and that's just being nice about it. I'm sure the list of high schools that haven't been banned from Disneyland is way shorter than the ones that have. Oh well, that's it. I can continue rambling about all this, but I want to get on to my final thoughts for this video, and I didn't want to make this one stupid long like the last one. At the very end of the day or the week or whatever you want to call it, Disney parks are still an alright experience to go to, but suffer from high ticket prices, a handful of terrible guests, and unreliable attractions, whether it be from mechanical issues themselves or the cast members not being fully on top of things. Do I think it's worth going to any of these resorts? Yes, but also no. The reason it's a yes is if you only go every year or every few years, then absolutely. Overdoing it will lead you to burnout of the parks, and that just goes for anything, to be honest. That also leads into the no reason. There are some theme parks you might have a better time at that are either local to you or they offer a better experience for the same price, if not cheaper. Universal's Epic Universe is now open as of recording this, and it seems promising from what I've seen, but it isn't the theme park killer everyone said like it was going to be, like it's gonna really get Disney. That's okay. Six Flags and Cedar Fair and SeaWorld and all those other places are good value every once in a blue moon. And then there's the others that I can't name, but you know what probably is the best Disney resort to visit? Tokyo Disneyland. Hands down. If you want a good Disney experience, go to the guys that outdo Disney and respect the name more than the name itself. It's very accessible even if you aren't fluent in Japanese. I went back in 2019 and I would love to go again when things chill out in the world. I guess I will leave you, the viewer, with one final question. Do you think it's worth going to the Disney parks? Feel free to discuss whatever you think about the parks, even if it's good or even if it's bad. Seriously, I'd love to hear everybody's take if you have one. I can only make assumptions based off past experiences as well as what I see on various websites or subreddits. Or you can always just go into the comments and call me a big fat nerd who spends way too much time complaining about theme parks online. Regardless, this has been Watersurf Side Tangent. It's a video essay series where I talk about random various topics. I did a big boy video essay on the Disney parks already, and I feel like that one still holds up. It was even featured on the Credit the Creators newsletter, so that's always something to put on a resume. Yes, hello future employers. That's right, I dunked on a major corporation and got featured for it. I'm just kidding. Well, you're at the end cards now. Here are some neat videos or series to check out. I highly recommend my Gaming Hour series, where I do a comedy overview of video games I enjoy. It's a good watch and you should check out the series. I also have the cast member podcast that talks about my time working in the parks. I'm not making any more episodes, but you might get a good listen out of that. I even have some of those crazy guest encounters in there too. There's also probably a little card to click on for this series too, and probably some other random thing that future me felt like putting up. Anyway, it's time to do the hot dog dance. Oh, the video's over now.